I wanted to share some scenarios of how well-intentioned candidates shoot themselves in the foot in job interviews, starting with the small talk. So you'd get asked something along the lines, "How are you today?" Most candidates would answer, "I'm fine, thank you." However, some candidates would try to add that little extra in there in a bit to build better rapport. "Hey, you know what, I'm fine, but maybe a bit grumpy because of the weather." Or, "Hey, you know what, I'm fine, but the job market, the mood in the job market affects my mental," and these sort of things, which are obviously not to your advantage if you think about it. Right? So my advice would be to keep it simple, keep it professional. When asked, "How are you today?" answer with, "I'm fine, thank you, how are you?" And then you can move on, even if it's not the best rapport. Right? There's many other techniques to build rapport if you choose so. The second scenario I'd like you to seriously consider would be the interview question of, "Tell me about a time when you noticed a peer was struggling and you stepped in and helped." Okay, this is a very common interview question. Now, what happens is some candidates would have a tendency to go on the personal side. For example, I once coached a candidate who answered this question with something along the lines, "Hey, you know what, then I had a very good friend of mine at work and he was struggling with alcohol. So I helped him to get back on track." You see, so in itself, there's nothing bad about helping someone to cope with addiction. It's just that you're applying for a job, and a job interview is a professional encounter. So how would you sell yourself as a candidate on helping someone to fight addiction? Unless you're a psychologist or you're a psychiatrist, you cannot really add value to your candidate brand, so to speak, during a job interview, even if you're well-intentioned. Okay, so what's the fix here? Well, you should think about the time when you helped a peer who was struggling in a professional context, right? So for example, even if that story was about your friend struggling with addiction, you could eventually spin it into a story where your friend was struggling to meet their goals, and you helped them using your subject matter expertise to meet those goals. And if you're a manager level role, then yes, you could get more into the interpersonal skills. If you're on the individual contributor, then you must use your subject matter expertise as well, right? The third scenario I'd like to share with you here would be the interview question. Tell me about a major shortcoming you've had. Okay, so an untrained candidate or a reactive candidate would easily talk about a major shortcoming in their personal life, a divorce, a death, and these sort of things. Because if you think about it, yes, that's actually a major shortcoming for you as a human being. Right? The problem is that you're during a job interview and you must read a little bit between the lines of these questions. So why would someone ask you about a major shortcoming during a job interview? It's because they want to see how you deal with failure in a professional context, of course. And the fix here would be to, of course, build a little bit your listening skills, and as well as to understand how to answer the failure questions in this scenario. That is, 50% of your answer should be your learnings. That's what you're selling yourself on during these job interviews, on the failure questions, right? And maybe one more example that I've heard as of recently. I asked a candidate, "What's your weakness?" This interview question is not as common as it used to, so people don't prepare these things in advance as much. And they answered this question with, "Hey, you know what? My weakness is that I cannot pass interviews." Okay. Now, how does this weakness sell you as the better candidate in a job interview? That's again, something impossible to explain. So even if you chose a weakness such as public speaking, arguably you could sell yourself, "Hey, you know what, I'm learning, I'm doing Toastmasters if you want to improve my speaking skills." However, talking about something that's totally unrelated to your subject matter expertise, such as you cannot pass interviews, will again, not play to your advantage. So overall, think of job interviews as a professional encounter where you talk about things that relate to your professional expertise. Right, so I hope you found this useful, and thank you very much for watching.